Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So we are here for part 2 of the unpopular opinions, and if you're new here, I do them in pairs now. So if you haven't seen the first one that came right before this one, don't forget to check it out before we get into the next one. But if you don't want to, completely new opinions, completely same outfit, but let's go ahead and get into the tiers. Alright, so let's explain the tiers real quick. You guys already know 24K means I agree basically 100%. This is so good, this is a word, could not have said it better myself. Get behind me is I mostly agree with you. Like, I'll allow it. That used to be a tier, by the way. Like, maybe I don't like 90 to 100% agree with you, but it's definitely more than 50%. I see where you're coming from. I see where you want to go. Love that for you is I don't really agree, but like I said, it's not for me. I love it for you. I think it's valid, but I really just cannot say the same. And then Beyonce, you know that means I don't agree. I don't know what you're thinking. Maybe you don't know what you're thinking, but maybe you do. And I just don't really see where you're coming from, but you know, it's all love. So let's go ahead and get into the unpopular opinions. I hate how some stans just blame the producers once they don't like their fave's latest release. I see this a lot with Taylor, Lana, Lord Stans, and Jack Antonoff. They blame him once they don't like a song or album and beg their faves to stop working with him when they realize that he's just doing what the particular artist wants. And if the artist wouldn't like it, then they wouldn't release it. The producer is not like this godlike figure who composes an entire song without the artist's input or approval, especially in cases where the artist is just as involved in the making process as Taylor, Lana, and Lorde are. It's ridiculous. You just didn't like the one song from your fave. It's not the end of the world. But don't go around blaming others and sparing the artist just because they're your fave when they are completely aware of the music they're putting out. This is a welcome reality check. Because I feel like every time we do unpopular opinions, there's some I want Jack Antonoff gone comments, and I understand that. I think I even opened an unpopular opinions video with a comment about this and saying, okay, I'm not always the biggest fan of the work that Jack Antonoff does, typically with, I'll say, actually all three. I don't know why I was gonna pick out. But in that last video, before I said that, I wanted to make sure like what songs of these artists were Jack Antonoff and which ones weren't. And I did find out that he actually did produce some of my favorite works from these artists. So as much as I kind of want something new, it can't be fully too much on Jack Antonoff, so I will say that. Also, you're so right. At the end of the day, if the artist didn't want the song, if they didn't want to work with that producer, they wouldn't. And we do have to keep that in mind. And I know I'm the main one saying, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if they work with this person? Wouldn't it be interesting if they work with that person? And I'm not going to stop doing that because it is fun to imagine. But I do think it is important to remember 9 times out of 10, especially these 3 artists that you've named, because they have a lot of creative control. But yeah, you are so right for this. And sometimes the producer is unfairly treated as the punching bag. And if you'll allow me to make an assumption, part of what I think it might be is like, okay, I'm such a fan of this artist, like, okay, let's use Lorde. What's wrong with me? Let's use Lorde. Like, okay, I'm such a huge Lorde fan, but I don't want to divest from Lorde if I don't enjoy this album. I don't want to unstand Lorde, so who else can I be mad at? And I guess like Jack Antonoff is usually going to be the secondary because he is someone who's going to be super, super involved with the album his artist is going to work on. And it's okay. Sometimes you can just say, that album wasn't for me, I'm still a fan. Doesn't make you less of a fan. Or you could say, this artist worked with this producer, it's not for me. Doesn't make you less of a fan. But yes, I just think it's hilarious that always Jack Antonoff mentions. I am going to put this in 24K though. 98% of celebrities, singers, songwriters, actors, models, etc. could be replaced with regular people lower within their given field, and nothing significantly different would happen. Most of their whole claim to fame derive from either chance encounters or being extremely lucky with either their family or wealth, and I feel like most of them just go in the direction their team or family pushes them in creatively, mass appeal over personal expression. Most of their talents are lackluster for how praised they are by their fans and how quickly they rose, and I think if regular people were given these bigger platforms, their results would be more unique and appealing due to their relatability and certain aspects of normalcy celebrities can't seem to grasp or translate into art. Obviously, nothing I'm about to say really is going to apply to Nepo babies, and it's hard to speak about both of these things separately because this person was like 98%, which basically means all of today's entertainers. But I'm going to say there are hella Nepo babies, but there are also people who aren't Nepo babies and weren't born famous and were born a regular person for all intents and purposes. So I say that to say a large part of these people who are now celebrities are the regular people that you speak of. But I think what happens is we go through this cycle of, okay, they're normal, they're relatable, regular person, I can see myself in them. Then they become that celebrity and you're like, okay, they're not relatable anymore. I want a new relatable person. So like, for example, if everybody who is famous today, we just got rid of them all, or just, okay, not got rid of them, we just made them unfamous and just took all of the regular people and made them famous. In 15, 20 years from now, if they're still famous, we would say the same thing. But I also understand the sentiment of, okay, it's frustrating to see someone who's not qualified or who I wouldn't have put in that position. As annoying as that is, just to keep your sanity, you just got to realize in every sector, someone's unqualified for their job. There's always going to be someone who is super, super talented and deserves all the fame, success in the world, who just might never make it for whatever reason. There's never going to be, in my opinion, a way to completely, I was going to say democratize, but I guess meritocratize fame to where only the people who deserve fame get it. That's also so relative, because I do think that in some cases there are people that we can universally agree may not be the most talented, but no matter how talented you are, there's always going to be someone saying you don't deserve your position. But your point is saying like, okay, they could be replaced and maybe nothing significantly different would happen. I think in most senses, I could agree with that. If we had a completely different set of celebrities, that would just be our set of celebrities. But yeah, I feel like I've rambled. I know I've rambled. Not to say too much. I get where you're coming from. I get your frustration, but I think the solution really isn't necessarily a solution. So I am gonna put that in. Love that for you, but obviously you definitely made me think, so I appreciate you. Unpopular opinion, romance is a genre that's falling behind the most compared to other genres because of how many of them in any format keep putting over and over gender essentialism and roles, abusive behavior, and the same heteronormative tall bad boy and short good girl dynamic nonstop. In other words, the couple diversity is not representative, downright pathetic of the actual diversity that real couples have. So true. Romance is struggling, and several conversations are being had about this right now because there are so many reasons. I think one of the primary reasons is because not even just romance, life in general has turned into this like IBGAF war, which if you don't know, that's abbreviation for I don't give a fuck. It's just like, oh my God, on any given topic, whoever can care the least, whoever can, it's not that deep the most, they're the coolest. And I'm like, I'm not saying that you should care about every single thing that crosses your plate, comes your way, but I think we're getting to a point where it's like not caring about anything, like that's so cool. And I'm not gonna be like ignorant of that, like I don't know where that comes from, because it does come from a lot of just being overwhelmed with always having to deal with something and always having to consume something and just the cynicism of the state of the world. So I get where it comes from, but I can also say that we're seeing the effects of that mentality as well. So one, because it's not cool to be mushy and be romantic, you know, that's being like a simp. Also just going off of the fact that most of these relationships do depict like abusive behavior and things of that nature. I understand that when you're watching a rom-com or something that's like has romance in it, no matter what story you're telling, conflict drives the plot. I get it. But so many of these romances, the damn conflict is that the two people are incompatible, and that's the conflict. But because they know they're in a movie or they know they're in a TV show and they know they're the main characters, they're like, we gotta be together at the end. So you're gonna sit through 90 minutes. You're gonna sit through a whole season of us getting into a fight every single episode. And okay, this is gonna be a little mini rant, but that's another reason to me why romance is so annoying, because it's just like people mistreating each other and back and forthing. And I'm supposed to just agree that they should be together and be married at the end. And I do genuinely enjoy rom-coms. I've been struggling like the rest of you guys to find any that are good, because either, like I said, the whole conflict is these two people shouldn't be in a relationship anyway, but the writer didn't know what else to do, so he's just gonna keep them, making them fight over dumb shit. Or it's also just like, okay, I can predict every single beat that this story is going to hit. I understand that there are things like plot triangle. I understand that there are traditional storytelling conventions, but sometimes your story being very cookie cutter and predictable, that's not doing nothing for me either. One of my favorite rom-coms right now, and it's actually an older movie, and by that I think it's like 3 or 4 years old. It's not that old, but it's called Lovebirds, and it stars Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani. I don't want to spoil it, but I will say it subverts some tropes of the rom-com, and I will also say the main conflict is not that these two people just can't figure out their relationship. The major conflict is outside of these two people, so we get to watch them take on a conflict outside of themselves. And I feel like those are the type of rom-coms that I enjoy better, where it's like we're in a relationship, we're partners. How are we going to solve this external conflict together rather than we're just butting heads the whole way? Also, another thing I enjoyed about Lovebirds, this is like a very small thing, but you very rarely see it, is that Issa Rae and Kumail, I can't remember their characters' names, but they're in an interracial relationship, but they're both people of color. That's something that you rarely see nowadays. Not in real life, but it's something that I feel like I rarely see depicted in media. But yeah, 24K for this, and this is a topic I could go on about longer, but I won't. Social media language is getting out of hand. It's making me, a teenager, feel old. They shame me for not knowing. It's time to take away the phones of the 6-year-olds saying skibbity toilet and phantom tax and yeah. Now I get how the older generation feels seeing all these dumb words come out of nowhere. First things first, calm down, little teenager. You're not old. You have your whole life ahead of you. And the thing is, you're never going to be caught up because it's generational. Like some of the things that I say, my parents don't know what it means and I explain it to them and that's fine. So I don't know what skibbity toilet means. I don't know what it's used. I'm sure some of y'all probably know. Help me out in the comments. Help a granny. And I'm joking. But it says it's a web series of YouTube videos. Okay, so the Phantom tax comes from the creator Phantom, who's with Kai Cenat's streaming crew. But basically, it's like jokingly taxing other people by taking bits of their food. So I've never heard of Phantom tax, but I have heard of something like mom tax, like, you know, like when the kids have Halloween candy and as the mom, you take a piece or two. So that if it makes you feel better, that's a slang term that's been around. But yeah, slang is always a thing that you might feel like you're never caught up with because even like fellow Gen Z slang, fellow Zillennial slang, I'll see something and not know what it means, but then like be able to either contextualize it or figure it out. But yeah, don't feel weird that you don't know. And slang is a normal part of language and like words like entering the lexicon, leaving the lexicon, very normal part of language. But what I can see potentially being an issue, I'm not like a little kid, so I don't really know, but maybe you're saying a lot of people only speak in slang or only speak in internet language. I would be curious though to know if you guys have any slang phrases that they're just overused and they make you mad. Because I know I've seen so many people say that lately about standing on business. That one doesn't frustrate me as much. But you know which one annoys me is when people say, oh, this is so like blank coded. I don't know why. That is the one that works my nerves. I'm like really like struggling on where to put this one. I understand this person's feelings. I've been there before, but now I don't feel old or I don't feel obsolete because I'm not caught up with the most recent slang. So that being said, I'm gonna put this in Love That For You based on what the categories stand for, even if I don't really. Fun music like Olivia Rodrigo's Bad Idea, Right, is overhated in my opinion. Not every song has to have sad or gut-wrenching lyrics. Sometimes I just want to jam out to a song. My point is that every song doesn't have to be slow and sad and have deep, meaningful meanings. Completely agree. This could tie back to what I was just talking about with romance and like that everything is a constant IDGAF for, and it's not. Also, I did not know that people didn't like Bad Idea, Right. Every time, it's 9 times out of 10, it's news to me when I find out that like public opinion for a song is like negative. I'm like, what? People didn't like that? And yeah, you guys know how I feel about this. There is something to be said about music for the sake of music or music just for fun that's unserious and isn't meant to do anything other than get you moving, make you happy, put you in a good mood. That music is not any less valuable than some of the more introspective, more serious, deep things. To me, it's just two different songs, two different types of music for two different purposes. Also ironic you mentioned this because just a couple of days ago, actually, I was reading an article about how cringe has sort of taken all of the fun and unseriousness out of K-pop. Because like looking back in the second generation, you would have groups like Orange Caramel where it's like, they're just unserious, they're just fun, they're just here to look cute and make a song that's gonna put a smile on your face. A lot of people tend to kind of mistake something that's corny or something that is unserious and is intentionally so. They tend to assume that it's bad when in a lot of cases, it's actually harder to make something corny, silly, unserious and have it still be good. But yes, completely agree. Not everything has to be serious. So I am going to put that in 24K. Musical theater would be a lot more popular if you could sing and dance along like at concerts, or at least some form of interaction. Blast them speakers so we can hear the true talents, but the formality of it all, what's the point? Okay, so the party pooper in me is like, the point is that I'm paying to watch a show and I want to see the performers I'm paying to see, and I want to see them act and see them sing. But I do kind of get the point of what you're saying. Maybe they could do like K-pop where there's like fan chants, that way you're not singing the whole time, because I can understand maybe it's meant to be silent or more silent compared to a concert, because you know the actors aren't just singing, so when they're done singing there's going to be some dialogue and you don't want to miss the dialogue, and it could be hard to sort of, you know, okay, the song's over, everybody settle in, sit down. That can be difficult to manage. I do feel like the dancing might be a bit much though, especially in theaters, because there are seats, like y'all just, there's no space for y'all to be dancing around and trying to command the whole stage, because you know it's gonna be that one theater kid who's like, nah, this is my show, this is my play. I don't go to musical theater shows, but if it was going to be like that, which is what I guess that you're kind of implying, like I'm not saying that you want everybody swinging from the rafters, it's not what I'm saying, but maybe people singing and dancing along, standing up. I don't think I would go see one of these shows personally, so I'm gonna put that in love that for you. I hate the concept of a child-free wedding. Weddings are a celebration of family. You quite literally become one eternal union with your partner, and not having your nieces and nephews, cousins, even siblings there just because they're children rubs me the wrong way. Plus, when I was a kid, I adored weddings and got excited when I was asked to go and be in one as a flower girl. I would watch the bride get ready in the ceremony, then go home and recreate everything I saw with my Barbies. I get this experience. I get not all kids like weddings. For some, it's probably very boring and lots would misbehave, but why take this experience away from the ones who will enjoy it, especially when you and the child are very close? I will say that there is a happy medium, because I think people who just hate kids and don't want kids anywhere ever in society, that's extreme and unrealistic. But also insisting on kids being everywhere, I think that's a bit extreme as well. Honestly, if you don't want to have kids at your wedding, that's your business. Like, this person's wedding is their day. They can do whatever they want. They can get married however they choose to get married. Obviously, they're going to have to deal with the consequences of that choice. Like, if they want to have a crazy destination wedding and everyone can't afford it, so few people come, like that's a shitty consequence, but you know, that's what you chose to happen. That's what happens. Same with not having kids. If you want to have a child-free wedding and this person can't spring a babysitter and they can't come, that's just the consequence of what happens. But I do think people have the right to try to mitigate some of these things, or at least try to give themselves the day that they envisioned, and not everyone envisions having kids at their weddings. And honestly, I think it could be a case-by-case basis where it's just like, okay, I could trust this kid to be at this wedding because I know their parents are going to be on their ass, they're not going to misbehave, but I don't want this kid at the wedding because they're a little unruly. And then that could cause drama, like, well, why is this kid allowed and this kid's not allowed? So I'm sure that's why some people just don't have kids altogether. Like I said, the fallout is going to be the fallout, but if it's someone's wedding, like, they don't have the right to be a bridezilla or be terrible to you, but they do have the right to make requirements about their own event. And you can like it, you can dislike it, but it's their event, it's not yours. So I am gonna put that in love that for you. I can't fully agree with you, I can't fully disagree, because I think potentially I would have kids at my wedding, but that's my wedding, that's not everybody else's wedding, so they don't have to have kids. Art critics matter, whether it's music or film, etc. Critics are important in dissecting the creative merit of an artist's work and in praising the choices and commentary found in their projects. If a bad album, film, book, etc. resonated with you or your friends, that's great, but people need to understand they personally may not have the skills or understanding necessary to fully appreciate an artist's work or to identify failures or shortcomings found in their efforts. Some of you have a tendency to get caught up in the visual or branding created by an artist. Some of you conflate sales for substance. Some of you develop a toxic loyalty, which is not conducive to critical analysis. But this is where art critics step in. Very well stated, and part of the reason I chose this one is because it sort of builds off of a conversation that we started in one of the last Unpopular Opinions videos, where I can't remember what the opinion was, but we were talking about whether critics matter as much. I did say that I understand why people think critics don't matter, because critique can be subjective. Just because someone does give a valid critique or valid criticism doesn't mean it always has to be agreed with. So it's still subjective in that sense, but as this person is saying, at least their critique typically is going to come from some sort of background or understanding of the art itself. And one argument I have seen for critics not really being as necessary anymore is the fact that, okay, I can stream a song, I can stream a film easier, and it's going to be less expensive for me and easier for me to do that now versus, okay, I'm going to go buy the whole album, I'm going to go take the whole family to see the movie, it's going to be $100. I need to read these reviews and see if this is going to be worth my money or not. But one argument that I have for critics, and it's something that I've never thought about, it was inspired by a tweet I actually just saw a couple days ago, and I'm going to share that with you guys in a second. A critic A good critic, a genuine critic, not only are they critiquing something, but they are also educating. Like, for example, if you read like music critics or things like that, the way that they write about a song can inform your criticism. It can teach you the things that you like about a song more specifically than I like that sound. It can teach you things that you don't like. It can teach you why something works, why something doesn't work. The tweet comes from Bobby. She hosts a podcast called The Afternoon Special, and it is like pop culture related. I get frustrated when audiences may not get themes in the way that I did too, but I also have some grace because media literacy is not something formally taught. I only know how to read a film or a show because I went to college to study it. If you're frustrated, share what you know. Like, if you bridge the gap with people who want to learn and don't treat them like idiots who are uninterested, not capable of understanding, they'll go forward with understanding media better. And the reason she was saying this, I don't know, I can't remember if it was her idea or she was commenting on something someone else said, but the idea of the word camp being bastardized and how now there's like a pop culture definition of words and an actual academic definition. And she was saying like, well, I understand that not everyone has read Susan Sontag's notes on camp, so I understand that not everyone has an academic working knowledge of what camp is, and their concept of camp might just be from what they've seen on Twitter, from what they've seen other people say. And I like the idea of people who critique like content, talk about content, or critics, things of that nature, how in a way that they do bridge the gap between the masses and the academic language that a lot of us are taught to think in and speak in. I know the way that I've been taught to break down like an album cover, break down an image or piece of art, or break down a song, that does come from an academic background. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Say someone makes a painting and it's called The Happiest Day of My Life, and it is all blue, all in shades of blue. You put the blue Happiest Day of My Life portrait in front of me, the first thing I'm gonna look at is like, okay, the title says The Happiest Day of My Life, but it's all in blue. Blue represents sadness, so what juxtaposition is here? This person cannot be saying that they are completely happy. There must have been something that made them sad. There must have been something else underlying that I'm meant to interpret. I know most people know that blue means sadness. This is just an example. However, if you don't know that, you're just gonna look at the painting and be like, oh, they're happy, they're so happy, that's it, they're happy. So like I said, you read my criticism of that, you learn, these colors mean different things. So there is something deeper here. There are layers to this. And now next time I look at a painting and see the color blue used and there's an emotion mentioned or attached to it, now I have a basis, a foundation to work off of. So I am gonna put this in 24K, and it's ironic because I'm kind of amending something that I said previously. But this opened my eyes, the Bobby tweet opened my eyes, and yeah, I think we unnecessarily glorify that album format. And this is coming from someone who loves a good old body of work. Albums arose partly due to economic considerations, technological and industry shifts, etc. It's not like it's necessarily the superior option for all artists all the time. Different artists are best consumed in different ways. There are certain artists that I honestly don't need the hour-long project from. It's not the mode they operate best, but it doesn't mean they're lesser. And if you can derive the same level of experience from a playlist, then cool, no? This is making me think about some things that I've said. And yeah, you're right. I think... And someone did comment this. I think they either commented something very similar or the exact opposite. I know Ariana Grande has said this before where she's like, sometimes I don't want to make a whole album. I just have a song and I think it's cute when it's done and I just want to drop it when I have it. And I feel like that is fair. Like sometimes you might just make something when the mood strikes and there's not a whole body of work you can incorporate it into. It's an outlier. Maybe it's the only song you made, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get to hear it. So I think that's fair. I think you're right. And I need to sort of get my mind out of that. It is kind of frustrating to me when I can't tell if like an artist is just in their little droplet era versus like, are these singles going to be attached to an album? And I feel like sometimes they don't know. Like sometimes they're like, I just put this out for fun, and then an album does come. I'm going to put this in, I feel like 24K is fair. I was almost going to be like, get behind me, but I think 24K is fair. All I Want for Christmas for You is tired. So I don't agree, but I get where you're coming from because I have said this before, I'm not a huge fan of Christmas music. And rarely do you get the newer projects that become those sort of like classics that get into the rotation. It's like, no, you might just stream this little Christmas EP, but you're not going to hear it on the music at the store. All I Want for Christmas Is You, Joy to the World, the Mariah Carey version, like those are off of Merry Christmas, the Mariah Carey album. Those do, and I will admit, I do like the songs, but it is also sentimental because they're always gonna remind me of childhood. They're always gonna remind me of like decorating the Christmas tree as a little kid. And I feel like the only Christmas project that I play in full is Christmas and Chill, Ariana Grande's little Christmas EP, and it's only 5 songs, so it's not hard to play it in full. And to me, it's because it sounds wintry, but it's not overtly Christmas music. Like to me, it's more pop, hip hop, pop trap. So I feel like Love That For You is fair, but yeah, I get where you're coming from. The mysterious act is ruining the music industry. So it's funny you say this because I'm like, I feel like the music industry is not mysterious at all. Like I'm trying to think what artist is mysterious? Who is mysterious? I'm like, I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder what they've going on. They just keep everything so close to the vest. Like, who is that these days? And I feel like it more or less has always been a thing where people are interested in celebrities and want to pull the curtain back and be in their business and know more about their lives. But the paparazzi and the tabloids, that's their whole job essentially. And now that we move more into social media, I think that it's just been more exacerbated. And now the artists themselves, they get to put all their business out themselves, or other people can expose them very quickly, very easily on Twitter. And I feel this a lot because as much as I love to consume music and always have, I wasn't a huge social media user. Now that I'm like more present on social media, I'm like, what? They did what in 2017? Like they did what 3 years ago? Because half the time I would not know much about what these people were doing unless they were releasing music, and like maybe I was following them personally like on Instagram or something, and they're not going to post about their own scandals on Instagram 9 times out of 10. Seeing how much a lot of these artists themselves post and how frequently they put things out, I'm just like, I think it's interesting that people do genuinely think that a lot of artists are out here still acting mysterious. This has to be a Beyonce, because from my perspective, this just is not a thing, and I just can't see it. But like I said, help me out. Drop the mystery, people below. Drop the mysteries. Drop the mysteries. When people say something is ahead of its time, they usually just mean it didn't get the reception they thought it should have at the time of its release. Very rarely these days is a project so innovative, forward-thinking, or out of the box to receive the ahead of its time title. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think that phrase is a bit of a cop-out as to why someone's fave underperformed. If someone has an example in any category, I'd really love to hear it. Whenever I hear this brought up in music, for example, it's just really synth-heavy beats, lol. Nothing about the subject matter, lyrics, or production would allude to it being ahead of its time. This is an interesting one, and I do agree that ahead of its time is a phrase that gets misused a lot, but I almost hesitate to say misused because we don't know. Like if I call something ahead of its time in 2020, I might not get my answer until 2025. I might not get my answer until 2050. And then sometimes you can call something ahead of its time because, based on like the current landscape of music or whatever media you're talking about, it might seem that things are heading in its direction. So you're like, oh my God, like you just jumped a few steps forward, I feel like. But then we kind of veer off and the landscape completely changes. So something you thought was ahead of its time, it just wasn't ahead of its time. It just was in its own lane. But then, it might have been ahead of its time in 50 years. We don't know. Maybe I could look into this more for you, like songs that actually were ahead of their time, albums that actually were ahead of their time. That would be a fun topic. Off the top of my head, doing no research, one example I could maybe think of is the whole thing with Charli XCX when she got ripped to shreds by some reviewer. I can't remember what album it was over, but they later changed their mind. And that's what I was talking about earlier when Charli was like, this is why critics, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that's what she was saying. This is why critics don't always matter, aren't always necessary, something of that nature. But I do agree that sometimes people will just say, okay, it's ahead of its time, like y'all don't get it yet, but you will. And like sometimes it just wasn't good, or sometimes it was good and it just never catches on as a trend. This is so confusing. This is like chicken or egg. Like I said, I will have to do my homework and think of more projects if they exist that were ahead of their time currently, because you're saying very few exist today or it's rare these days. I really can't yes or no, so I have to do my homework. I think I'm gonna put this in Get Behind Me because obviously very sticky, very hard to answer. SOS is better than Control. I've said it before, I think I said it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. To me, the biggest knock on SOS was just that the album was very long and a lot of the songs kind of like, there wasn't as much cohesion on that album as there was for Control. So like I said, I do think Control is the stronger project, but I do think that the albums have two different moods. Like Control definitely gives me a spring, younger mood, a younger phase of my life, more naive phase of my life. I'm just learning, I'm fresh, I'm new, I'm green, like springtime. SOS gives me a more winter feel, not only because it came out in the winter, because it has a colder, more jaded, more toxic. I know everyone's like, this is a toxic girl album. I liked it a lot. Okay, I was gonna say I'm not toxic. Does anyone call themselves toxic and mean it? But yeah, SOS very much has that essence of, I am older, I am wiser now, but I'm also hurting. I just need a moment to act out of that hurt. I just need a moment to be a little messy, a little evil, and I just need to get it out of my system. I think another thing about Control that people love, like another additional element, is the little voicemails at the end of the songs. I can't remember if it's on every single song in the album, but it is on multiple. But yeah, all that being said, I do love SOS, but I do love Control more. But Ghost from the Machine better get a Grammy, because that was like my favorite off of SOS and I was excited to see it recognized. And if that gets a Grammy, I'm gonna hoot and holler and scream. I'm gonna put that and love that for you, because I do. First of all, congrats for 100K subscribers. Thank you. And no, I didn't choose this opinion just because they buttered me up. I do like the opinion, but thank you. My unpopular opinion is that Pitchfork isn't as bad as people pretend it is. I even think it's necessary. Yes, there are times where I do side-eye them. For example, the whole situation about one of their critics praising New Jeans for the same thing they criticized Pink Panthers for, even though New Jeans were clearly inspired by Pink Panthers. But at the same time, I don't like how people are always wanting the whole website to be shut down. I think the presence of a media that don't sugarcoat things and criticize mediocrity is very important for the music to get better, more innovative. For more context on the Pink Panthers New Jeans thing the person is referring to, and honestly as a refresher for myself, I did pull up the tweet, so I will, share this with you guys. So the critic said, Pink Panthers is so bad. These songs just do not stick. It's all just fashionable production. Her voice is kind of perfect, sitting at a range that has the patina of being pitch shifted, but she's never able to capitalize on that. The hooks and songwriting aren't there. I think that word actually might be patina. So this was tweeted November 10th, which is the same day that her album Heaven Knows came out. And then the same critic earlier this year in July, so just a few months ago, they reviewed New Jeans EP Get Up, and they're a K-pop group, by the way. So the critic said, for Pitchfork, I reviewed the New Jeans mini album Get Up, which I've heard 72 times in the past couple weeks. Heard Super Shy and ETA at the club this past weekend too, which just confirmed for me that New Jeans are the best K-pop group right now. And the funny part about picking out Super Shy and ETA specifically are, especially Super Shy, that's the most Pink Panthers coded song in the world. But you know which one annoys me is when people say, oh, this is so like
blank coded.
I did acknowledge that Pink Panthers isn't just making all of the music that's reminiscent to her earlier work on this new album, but I do think that there's enough of that drum and bass or garage type music. I think garage is the umbrella and drum and bass falls under it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. There's enough of that evident on there, and it's sort of one of the through lines of Pink Panthers' work in her music. She expands on it, but like I said, it's very present to the point where I can get how you can definitely like one project more than the other, but these projects are in the same ballpark enough for it to be very interesting for you to think one is good and one is bad. And so essentially that whole situation was just another reason for people to be like, shut the doors at Pitchfork. We are so over and done with Pitchfork. And I can't say I know the whole backstory because there honestly might be something deeper there that I'm unaware of. But I've noticed a lot of people just hate Pitchfork. And I see both sides of this because like if you watch my videos, you know that I do use Pitchfork a lot. I've quoted Pitchfork several times. I'll mention how Pitchfork scored an album. But all that being said, there have been times where I read a Pitchfork review and I was like, this person is just being... I hate to be like they're being a hater, but I could tell that they were going beyond the realm of just a critique. Like it got to the point where I was like, okay, you might think it's bad, like you don't have to like everything, but a lot of this is getting like personal or like you're just trashing on them, just dogging on them. And I do think having that discernment is important because sometimes you can misconstrue someone's words or think they're being harsher. And I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I remember I can't remember what album it was for, but I sent like a Pitchfork article to my friends and I was like, this was just way too much. This was way too harsh. I agreed with them not liking it, but I think they went way too far in their critique. And he was like, well, they probably did that way they could get like one quote out of that review, it become a headline and it goes viral. A lot of people don't read these publications unless there is some sort of sensational headline. And he was like, you're going to read it because it pertains to something you're working on, but the general public isn't necessarily going to sit down and read all these Pitchfork articles. They're just going to read the tweets. They're going to read whatever gets quoted and ends up on like Popbase or something, so to speak. And going back to that discernment thing, like sometimes you just have to realize you can't take everybody's opinions. Maybe you don't take everybody's criticisms either, because while Pitchfork is one publication, obviously several different people write for Pitchfork. So sometimes it might not be the whole publication, but some of the people that they hire to write these articles, which, you could argue like, why are they hiring certain people? But so yeah, I personally don't think Pitchfork as a whole entire publication needs to be shut down. I think I'm going to put this in Get Behind Me. Mariah Carey is the most overrated vocalist of all time, and even in her prime, she does not deserve to be included in the vocal trinity. If I could make one request, well, I'm gonna make one request. Y'all can honor it, y'all cannot honor it, but this does irritate me just a tad. When it's like, this person sucks, this person is bad. Mariah to you does not belong in the vocal trinity. I wish you would have told me like, who is your vocal trinity then? Because like based off that, then I know like, are you a child? Are you just messing with me? Is this bait? Is it all of the three? Is it none of the three? Like I need some insight because obviously I don't agree. I don't agree, but it's like if you had a different three and you're like, okay, but like maybe she's like 8 or 9, then I could be like, okay, I don't necessarily agree with that, but like fair, like you're making a decent case for yourself. Okay, you said she's the most overrated vocalist of all time, which that's very extreme. And even in her prime, if you're watching this, I need you to comment down below. You don't have to comment from this account. Log into your burner, do what you need to do. Drop your Trinity, because I gotta know. I don't want to talk about this forever because there's honestly not much to talk about, and I'm sure because I know how these videos work. This is gonna be popping in the comments. Hi, disagree, clear Beyonce, Beyonce. All right, so here is the final setup, the final arrangement. Lots of love that for yous this time. All right, so that concludes round 2 of this round of Unpopular Opinions. As always, be sure to let me know your thoughts, let me know your feelings. Again, just want to reiterate, if you comment any unpopular opinions under this video, they are not gonna make it into the next video. So if you got an opinion and you're like itching to share it and it's in the back of your mind, put it in your notes app. Please hold on to it. Early February, I will put out a community post. I don't have a date in mind yet, but I know it's going to be early February, and then you can drop it in that community post. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter if you want to keep up with me there, and if you'd like to become a channel member, the link is in the video's description. Again, thank you so very much for watching. I love you all so very much, and I'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.